This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome to Jumping Bomb Audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to Jumping Bomb Audio and Podcast, all about Joshi Pro Wrestling. I'm Aaron. I'm joined by my co-host, Taylor. What's up, Taylor?
Hi, we have another milestone episode here. We hit 20 episodes last episode, and this episode is our first ever year in review episode.
That's right. We're also of legal drinking age. 21.
That's true as well, 21.
This podcast...
Exciting.
Well, I guess not. I mean, 21 years, I guess. We've not been doing this for 21 years quite yet.
Well, we count, we pack in enough great content into each episode that it's like a year.
Don't you dare say that doing a podcast with me feels like a year. Each episode feels like a year. That's rude, Taylor. I know you were thinking that, and that's rude.
Sorry.
All right. Follow us on Twitter, I guess, at JBombAudio. We haven't talked that much on Twitter lately, although I did retweet some news about Yusuke Aikawa that we'll talk about later. And you also did something on Twitter that I can't remember.
Yes. Well, we tweeted out asking for questions for this episode.
Indeed.
That happened. I also tweeted about the All Japan Ice Ribbon union or agreement or whatever it will become. And I also tweeted about Yusuke Aikawa when she mentioned Yoshiko in an interview about her appearance at an upcoming Stardom show.
Oh, could be interesting. I feel like on every episode of this podcast, we've talked about the possibility of Yoshiko working with Stardom again. I feel like that's been a common conversation we've had.
Yeah, and I feel like from episode to episode, our opinion on whether it will happen changes. Some episodes were like, why would it ever happen? Some episodes were like, it's definitely going to happen.
Well, that's the adventure. That's why you listen to every episode of a podcast, to really get that adventure.
Yeah, to get the ebb and flow, the give and take of life.
This is going to be a goofy one, folks. Got a feeling. You can follow me over at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor's at Tay Mambo. Subscribe to the podcast. All you got to do is search Jumping Bomb Audio on the podcast app of your choice. Hit the subscribe button. Give us a 5-star rating and a review if you use the Apple Podcast app. Tell a friend who likes Joshi. And also, if you want to donate to the show, I mean, what else better could you do with your money around Christmas time? Then head over to redcircle.com/shows/jumping-bomb-audio and give Taylor and me a little present for the holiday season. Here's what we're going to do on this show. We are going to do our year-end awards. We've got a bunch of those to hand out. And then we're going to answer some questions, as Taylor mentioned. We asked for questions on Twitter and in the Voices of Wrestling Discord. So we've got several of those to talk about. And then at the end of the show, we are going to talk about the news about the Stardom Budokan show. And also we're going to preview the Stardom. Where is this, in Osaka? 12/20 is the date. I can't remember where it's happening, though. I think it's in Osaka. Yeah, this is Osaka 80 on number 1.
That's right. You're exactly correct.
So we'll preview that at the end of the show. That is the only, we're not going to talk about any wrestling shows that happened in the past 2 weeks, just to be clear. So if you came here looking for talk about I don't know, some wrestling show. We're not talking about it. So it's just year in review. And then, that's it. So we're going to do that. We'll jump right in with the awards. You just want to go down these the way they're listed in our sheet here, Taylor?
Well, Aaron, I was going to say, should we go from the bottom up? Because we have the big awards listed at the top, and I feel like we should, save those for last.
Well, damn it, because the first one I didn't really have an answer for. So it's a good start. So we'll start with you. All right, so we've basically cribbed these largely from the Wrestling Observer newsletter awards, though we've taken out some of them that we either didn't think were applicable or, like best promo, two English speakers really don't have a firm hold on who the best promos in Japanese women's wrestling are. So we've taken that out. But otherwise, we got a bunch of things to talk about. So, best booker, Taylor.
Yes, and this is probably going to give away some of my later picks, but I picked Emi Sakura, who is booking Gato / probably more appropriately, Choco Pro. I just think it was a super interesting year. Obviously, we all know that every promotion worldwide had to deal with COVID, and most of the ways that these promotions dealt with COVID was either to shut down completely or to sort of have their usual shows with either no crowd or some sort of limited capacity crowd, or limited, you can't cheer, you can only clap, and things like that. And I just think that the Choco Pro was in the same place that a lot of the Gato Move shows are, at Ichigawa Chocolate Square. But I just think the format of the show, live streaming these Choco Bro shows every few days or, once a week, whatever they were doing, I just think it was an out-of-the-box way to work around having no crowds. I never watched any of those Choco Bro shows and went, wow, I can't believe there's no crowd. I'm missing, a big thing that's missing from these shows is that there's no one there. So I just think Emi did a great job. She booked interesting matches. She had sort of running storylines featuring almost everyone who appeared in the promotion for more than, a couple shows. And people got featured. I think it elevated a lot of the talent there. I mean, we talk about Mei Saruga, Yuna Mizumori, and Lulu Pencil and people like that. And I think everyone at the end of the year came off better than they were at the beginning of the year. They appear stronger. They're, more popular. They've had matches that people have enjoyed. So I just think it was a great sort of outside the box way to book a promotion in this very strange time.
I think, as you were explaining that, Taylor, I find it very hard to argue with. I mean, thinking about it, because, a big problem that I had throughout these awards or thinking about it is just like COVID really, it wreaked havoc on everything. So, this isn't any big news, but it also, wreaked havoc on wrestling in that even though a lot of wrestling ended up happening, it wasn't nearly as enjoyable, I don't think, as wrestling normally is. And you weren't able to have those moments, that really pay off in the way a big, loud crowd would be able to pay them off. And sometimes there were some stories that just got left behind at times, or feuds that got left behind, and shows that got canceled, etc. So, I think about some of the promotions when I think about which promotions are most well booked. I think about, which stories were the most satisfying. But I think you make a great point that what Emi did with Choco Pro was more creative than what anybody else did, and probably presented a type of wrestling that was most easy to enjoy during the COVID era of wrestling. So I'm just going to piggyback on you. I'm just going to agree with you here.
Great. A wise decision.
As always. Okay. Well, you said we kind of build here, but the very next award you have on here is Best Major Show. So we got to get right into it here. What were your, I guess we should say this. On some of the smaller awards, we're just going to do one. And then when we get to some of the bigger ones, I think we're going to do a top 3. And then for Match of the Year, we've both got a top 10. But yeah, Best Major Show.
So my 3 were, number 3, I had Tokyo Joshi Wrestle Princess. Obviously, the main event was the featured sort of attraction of the show. It was the thing that got the most buzz, but I thought it was, Tokyo Joshi's biggest show ever. I thought it was really well booked. I thought a lot of the matches were a lot of fun, and I just thought overall it's a strong show, and obviously a show that's a lot of fun that ends with what I thought was a 5-star match is always going to finish very high in terms of the best shows. My next pick was the Ice Ribbon Yokohama Buntai, the final show there, which featured that Maya Yukihei Suzu Suzuki match. It featured the Fantast Ice decision match, the first champion Risa Serra winning the title there. I just thought it was a super fun show. I thought it had really great matches all up and down the card. I thought the main event, semi-main event, all delivered. It had the return of Mio Shirai even very far down the card in, I believe, the second match. So overall, I just thought it was a super fun show. I remember watching it and really enjoying it, having a lot of fun. So that is my number 2 pick. And my number 1 pick is Stardom Yokohama. I just thought it was a really great show, a lot of strong matches, starting all the way from the beginning. The first match, that high-speed title match between Azumi and Starlight Kid, all the way up the card. I thought it was a great presentation of the very strong in-ring capabilities of Stardom. So those are my 3 picks for Best Major Show.
All right. Well, this is something that's hard for me because I really don't. I have to do a better job next year of tracking shows, like which were my favorite shows. So I kind of just don't think about it in that way, I suppose. So I had to go back and try to put my very small brain to it today. Number 3, I'm going to copy your number 1. I'm going to go with the Stardom Yokohama show, probably their best show of the year. So I wanted to include one of their shows. But you've already talked about that at some length. My number 2, and maybe someone will disagree that this is a major show, but this is Diana's show from August 30th. I mean, there were, according to Cage Match, 142 people there, so perhaps not a major show. But it had several very good matches on it. The Nagase Nozaki versus Sareee time limit draw. You had the tag title match with Luminous winning the tag titles from Kaoru Ito and Tomoka Watanabe, which was one of my favorite matches of the year. You'll hear about that later. And then the Asuka Ayako Sato match for the world title. And it's just like, I don't know, Diana went from not really making tape very much to making tape, and it was often kind of a slog to watch on tape, especially without Sareee when she wasn't there at all. And then, boom, they had this show that I thought delivered on all cylinders and kind of speaks to the, I would say, above average year that Diana had. So, I don't know. I like the show a lot. My favorite show of the year, this is probably live bias, and that's the Tokyo Joshi Pro Show from January 4th. You know, being there certainly is a reason that it sticks in my mind as something that I enjoyed a lot. But looking back at it, there's a lot of really fun stuff on this show, and especially the top of the card. I mean, you had the Sareee Natsumi Maki match, which was one of my, it didn't make my top 10 list, but it was one of my favorite matches of the year. The very good Thunder Rosa Mizuki match, Maki Ito and Hikari Noa for the International Princess title. That was very good. And the main event of Yuka Sakazaki and Miyu Yamashita was really good, excellent. But it also Tokyo Joshi Pro is one of those things. I think we've talked about this on the show. It's like, it's just a very fun live experience. So getting to be there and watch it really, I'm sure, increased my enjoyment of it. But I think even on tape, it was an excellent show. So that's my favorite show of the year.
Yeah, I also like that Tokyo Joshi show. But at this point, I guess it wasn't even my brain, because January 2020,
oh yeah, it's insane.
in a way, feels like it was 15 years ago. So I didn't even think about that, but that probably also would have been, if not in the 3, up near the top, because I was not there live. But I also really liked that show. It was a very strong show.
It's very hard to believe that in this calendar year, I was able to travel to Japan. Like, the idea that that was possible and allowed in this year is pretty hard to believe. But yeah. Also, while I was there, the flu was going around, the wrestlers. It's like, okay, I think we know that probably was not the flu going around. God. Rookie of the year, Taylor.
Yeah, I had trouble with this category because I couldn't think of I frankly couldn't think of very many rookies, because there's now Ishikawa and Yuki Mashiro in Ice Ribbon. Sendai Girls has 2 rookies. I think Tokyo Joshi has 2. I went with Honori Hana. She did start in December 2019, so it's a little bit of a cheat, but not too much. I just find I've enjoyed the matches she's been in, but also I find her the most interesting being in Seedling. She's the first rookie now. Of course, Riko Kaiju is also there. But I've just been so interested in her year to see where she goes, how things happen. You know, there's no precedent for a rookie in Seedling, how quickly they'll move up the card, what they'll do. Honori Hana actually getting a win at Seedling's most recent show, I believe. So that was a big thing. But I've just enjoyed her year. And because she was the most interesting person for me to follow, that is who I picked.
Yeah, I also struggled with this. I'm going to go with Riko Kaiju. And the main reason for that is, when I was thinking of all the rookies, she probably had my favorite single match that I can think of among rookies. Her debut against Tsukasa Fujimoto was a match that I enjoyed a lot. So that's basically it. That's why I'm going with Riko Kaiju. Most underrated, and I love the way we've both gone with this one. So I'll let you get it started.
I mean, I feel like if any regular listener to this podcast could probably guess who I would pick, although it's a little bit different now because she is out injured. But my pick, of course, Jungle Kiona, someone who just, underrated, I think, in this case, in case people aren't familiar with the Wrestling Observer Awards. Most underrated usually in this case means underpushed, by and large. So, of course, Jungle Kiona to me fits that to a T, someone who could probably be at the top of the company and has never been this year or any prior year. So she was an easy pick for me.
And similarly, I've chosen Momo Watanabe as the most underrated. To me, the best wrestler in the company, and hasn't even sniffed. I mean, I guess she did have a title match with Mayu, but no one expected her to win. And only the people who like to fill up my mentions think she's going to be a champion again soon. No, I love you all, I promise. But she should be pushed more. So, yeah, I went with Momo. Most overrated, I got to tell you, Taylor, this one I struggle with. I feel like most people, I mean, it's true when I say I think Momo is most underpushed, but it's not like there are people ahead of her that I think are just like, ugh, why would you push this person, So I think in most of Joshi, you don't have a situation too often where it's like, the famous one is like Well, I guess this year is like evil or whatever, where it's like somebody who everybody kind of universally thinks is overpushed. I'm not sure we see that as much in Joshi.
Yeah, I couldn't think of too many options. My one option, and this maybe will get me, people will be in my mentions now. So Aaron, you'll be safe for maybe a couple weeks. Sakura Hirota, I really like her. I just find it sometimes confusing that she gets so many opportunities. I mean, she held a title in Diana this year. She got her Regina DeWave title match at one point. She main evented the most recent Wave show. I think that was the most recent Wave show. She main evented. I like her, and I'm sure that some part of it, of her sort of gimmick or act, is missed because I don't speak Japanese. But I just feel like the promotion she's in, it sometimes feels like she's all over, where there's sometimes people in the promotion where I go, oh, I wish that this, person could get more opportunities, in Wave to push someone at the top of Wave. When, if it's Nosaki against Hirota, Nosaki is coming out of that match as champion. Almost, 99.9% of the time. So, that was my pick. I do like her, but I just think that she's overly featured in some of the promotions where she works.
I don't have a great answer for this, so I'm just going to skip it.
Just going to leave me hanging. I take a step out and you leave me all alone.
I thought about trolling you and saying Mayumi Ozaki. Thought that would be funny.
Oof.
But I mean, I don't know. Like, I just don't think that many people are.
Yeah, it's not most of the time, the people who are pushed either, are very talented wrestlers, is usually the case, or have some sort of reason why they're pushed, and it right. Makes sense.
I mean, like, if we'd done this in March, I would have said Giulia probably, but I think she has, risen to the level of her push, so it all worked out in the end. But it's hard for me to think. I mean, even Hirota, it's like, well, the crowds do seem to enjoy her very much, so she got that going for her.
Yeah. I mean, that is true. And I know, and I said it before I gave my pick, that most people very much enjoy her, in Japan, but also I see a lot of times on Twitter, people really enjoying her matches. So I'm probably alone or more alone on an island with that. But, as you said, it is a bit of a tricky category, because I couldn't think of anyone in Stardom. I couldn't think of anyone. I mean, I really couldn't think of anyone else. That was the only thought that came in my head.
All right. Well, we'll move on to our next category, Best Flying Wrestler.
Yeah, Flying Wrestler is a bit tricky. There aren't a ton of, I think, joshi wrestlers who you would immediately think of as flying in the way that you would think of some sort of men's wrestlers as very high flying, like Ray Phoenix or people like that. My pick, it might not exactly fit, but I wanted to, give this person some shine. So I picked Starlight Kid. As I've talked about on the podcast before, I think Starlight Kid is really great and always improving. And, I think sort of that high speed, I think she fits neatly in sort of a high speed category, which is, in my mind, adjacent to flying. So Starlight Kid was my choice.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's kind of tough. There's not a lot of people who are just like, their whole offense is aerial based, So I try to think about this. But for me, the person who stood out the most in my mind was Asuka, because she does do quite a bit of, aerial offense. And she, to me, is probably the most athletic person in Joshi. and she does definitely the most interesting flying stuff. So yeah, for me, it's Asuka.
Yeah, I also thought about Saya Kamatani, who I think in the future, maybe next year or even the year after that, will probably, if this is being decided on a yearly basis, will probably be at the top of the list a lot of years because, as I've mentioned, she's very similar to Asuka. She has a lot of sort of high flying offense. But as I've said on the podcast before, I don't know that she's quite at that polished level where I could say, oh, she's the best. She's the best in this category. I also thought about Asuka. So I think it would be hard for me to say, oh, it's Saya Kamatani and not have picked Asuka when I think Asuka is sort of Saya's endpoint goal as to putting all the very athletic talent together.
Yeah, the thing about Saya's flying is she's not very good at it yet. She botches a lot of flying moves, I feel like. So yeah, I would have probably pushed back on you if you'd gone with Saya.
Yeah, I don't think she's ready yet, but she has in my eyes. I'm sort of like, oh, it's coming together where if it all clicks at some point, like the Phoenix Splash she does, I think looks really cool. And I could see if she starts adding a couple things that also she can really nail. Like something like that Phoenix Splash, you can put in a GIF and be like, look at this. This is really cool. And people go, oh, that's a fly, So it's not yet, but I can see into the future, a year from now when we do this again, I could see maybe she's put it all together and then she could win the category.
Okay. Best Brawler is up next. Is there not a best striker? Have I just always done that in my own brain all these years?
I don't think there is a best striker. I think it's just best brawler.
Okay, best brawler. Go ahead.
My best brawler, I picked Risa Sera, the holder of the Fantastic Ice title. She had that hardcore match with Rina Yamashita at the Ice Ribbon Yokohama show, which I talked about in my best major shows, which was really crazy. There weren't a ton of options in terms of people who are really do a brawling style, and I think Risa is probably at the top. Rina Yamashita would also be another contender for me as well. But Risa's held that Fantastic Ice title where she's done a lot of different styles, but that big first show was the big hardcore brawling match. So she was my pick.
I went with Yoshiko here, and that was largely because I wanted to. I mean, I do think she's a very good brawler, but I also just wanted to make sure that we shouted her out in these awards, especially coming off a year where she became a viral TikTok sensation, and we don't have a best on social media award. So I just went with Yoshiko. Any thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a good pick. I think Yoshiko had a good year, so it's good to. I think it is good. You sort of did what I do, which is with sort of these, not the top awards, not the most outstanding, trying to get a variety of people in who I think did well during the year, but might not make that tippy top of the list. And I think Yoshiko is a good choice for that because she had a very good year. She's back to being double champion in Seedling. So obviously she has the company behind her and had a number of very good matches this year. So I think she's an excellent pick for this category.
Oh, good. I'm going to try to prompt you more to tell me that I did a good job. I'm going to work on that. Not going to happen on this next award. Best technical wrestler.
Yeah, this was tough. The first thing that came to my mind was, someone from the, I guess, short-lived Joint Army in Ice Ribbon, which would have been Syuri. Might have been a pick. Mine, Aaron and I talked about this before the show started. Does it really fit the category? It's iffy, but it's a person, like I just talked about, that I think had a very good year, and I wanted to get her into one of these awards because I think she had a great year. So my pick was Miyuki Takase. Not exactly a technical wrestler as you probably think about it, but I think she had a great year. And I do think she has some aspects of sort of technical wrestling to her, so it's not a totally off-base pick, but that was my pick. I think she had a really great year, really solid, finished very high on my list of best wrestlers, but just sort of outside that top tier. So wanted to fit her in, and so into technical wrestler she went.
I think I'm going to go with Syuri. I mean, I kind of think of her more as a striker, as we were talking about a minute ago, but she does do a lot of technical wrestling. And I don't have a great answer for this. So, and she's had a really good year, I think, outside of Stardom for sure. And once she's gotten into Stardom, she's been pushed pretty well and is someone who pretty much always stands out on a show to me. So I think Syuri's a good choice here. Gassing up my own picks now.
You're welcome.
Thank you
for mentioning her at the beginning.
Yeah, that really helped. Well, you said Joint Army, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's good. And I started thinking about that. Okay, most charismatic.
Yeah, this one is a little tricky because, as we said, we are not native Japanese speakers, and I think sometimes a lot of the charisma comes across in what they say, but my choice was Asuka. I just think the way she carries herself in the ring, the sort of character she has, to me is an easy fit for this. It was the first and I think the only person I considered for this category. As I said, I just think that she is the complete package in terms of having, obviously great in-ring work, as we've talked about, but also has that sort of character down where she's someone you want to watch in the ring, even when she's, in a tag match and she's outside the ring waiting for the tag. She draws your eyes to her because she has that charisma. So she was an easy pick for me in this category.
Yeah, I just agreed with you on this one, Asuka. It's hard to think of someone who has a more magnetic personality within joshi, off the top of my head anyway. It's just like she always draws your eye. And even it's, it's not just her, I mean, I struggle to call it character work, but like just her normal like mannerism stuff, but also just in the ring. I think she's very charismatic. She does things with a flair, which, is important for pro wrestling. So to me, this one isn't particularly close, even when I think about some other folks who are very charismatic. Someone who I think has like a very funny, like weird charisma is Sai Kamitani, who we talked about a little bit ago. I guess we're doing a lot of Asuka Sai Kamitani comparisons on the show, and that's not a bad one really for Saya to aspire to, as you mentioned earlier. So yeah, I think Asuka by a landslide, really. Most improved wrestler.
So there were a lot of choices I could have probably gone with, all from the same place. I think, as I mentioned before, Choco Pro, the way Emi Sakura has booked the that promotion this year really gave emphasis to a lot of different people at different times. They each got their opportunity to shine. But me looking at everything that happened this year in terms of the matches that happened, my pick was Yuna Mizumori, who, I was aware of in 2019. I had seen some of her matches, but really shot up this year in terms of both having great matches and having a sort of character that got me invested in her and in Choco Pro as an entire promotion. So this one was fairly easy, although you could have gone with a lot of people in that promotion. You could have gone with Mei Suruga as well. But she was the most improved, really helped by the situation she was in, being in Choco Pro, which really helped put a lot of focus and emphasis on her.
I went a slightly different way, which I kind of suggested earlier, but I'm going with Giulia. And that's because, frankly, when she showed up in Stardom, I was worried that it was just going to be a huge flop. She came out of the gates very poorly. God, what was that? Was it late last year that she showed up in Stardom? Mid last year?
I think it was November, the end of November, I think she showed up.
It was very late last year. And then early on into 2020, it was still, a pretty big struggle for her, I thought. And not only did she get better, to me, I don't think you could disagree that she's one of the two top stars in the company, but I think her ring work has really improved to where it makes sense that she's one of the top two stars in the company. Her charisma she always had a charisma, but it was awkward. I mean, there was just something like strange about the way she projected herself. And I do think, obviously, you never know when somebody's doing a promo if how much of it is real and not. But I got the sense, from some of her promos that she was just literally uncomfortable when she arrived in Stardom. When you consider everything that happened, when she was leaving her former promotion to come there. And then I don't know if this is true, but it would be easy for me to believe that some people probably weren't that happy that she was kind of brought in and immediately thrust into not only a top spot, but, getting the shot at Wrestle Kingdom before the New Japan show, so I don't know. I just think she was uncomfortable and she became comfortable. And once she did, she just took off and is doing, to me, very good work. Has become one of the top wrestlers in the company and a major star. So kudos to Giulia.
Aaron, I'll say without any prompting from you that I agree, and that's a very good pick, Aaron.
Wow.
Great job.
You. Thanks, Taylor. We've done this podcast long enough now that Taylor knows that I need some encouragement. It really helps. Okay, we're getting into the business end of the awards. Feud of the year.
Yeah, I always struggle with this because this is a thing that I guess I forget about a lot of the feuds I like, or I look back and I say, okay, so-and-so had, one match. I just always think of a feud as like something that lasts for many like weeks or months. And I just always struggle to think. I picked Giulia versus Tom Nakano. I didn't love the entire build or everything, but I thought that, they had a series of good matches that I really enjoyed. I thought it made Tom look really great. It really helped Giulia. So that was my pick, but mainly, not to diminish my pick, but as I said, I always struggle to think of feuds, so I really couldn't even think of that many other feuds to include here.
I went with, that was a good feud, I thought, but I went with Tsukasa Fujimoto versus Suzu Suzuki. It was a story that I did not understand, and you had to explain it to me and the listeners, but it was so bizarre that I enjoyed it very much. Perhaps not as bizarre as Fujimoto's big feud from last year, but still one that got me very interested in the match. And perhaps most importantly to me for a feud, it blew off in an excellent match. So it all worked for me. All right. Are we going to do match of the year next? I guess so.
Do you want to do match or do you want to skip it and save it for last?
Let's save it for last. I think that's the
right.
big thing.
All right.
To me. All right. Promotion of the year. We have to know where Taylor's going.
Yeah, so I have three. My number 3 is Tokyo Joshi. I think they had a good year. They had, obviously, as Aaron mentioned, their big show on January 4th. They had Wrestle Princess. And I think one thing I've talked about on the show is that they lost a few people a few months back, which for most promotions would be, you might think, oh, that's going to maybe affect them or hurt them. But I actually think it sort of strengthened the company. It allowed the company to give a little bit more focus to some people who maybe hadn't gotten focus or hadn't gotten focus in a while. I think they have a lot of momentum coming out of that Wrestle Princess show, heading into another big January 4th show. So I just think overall they had a very strong year. My number 2 is Ice Ribbon. I always think Ice Ribbon is going to be near the top of these awards. They usually do very well at, having good matches alongside having sort of interesting stories. As Aaron mentioned, the Fujimoto Suzuki story, Suzuki becoming champion, sort of this young champion being a big story, which I think is really interesting and exciting. Introducing the Fantastic Ice title, which I think has been very fun because they've been able to have this variety of matches, a hardcore match or the match at Ueno Park where it was a baseball game that lasted 42 hours. So I just think they had another strong year sort of doing what they usually do, which is a combination of good in-ring work with interesting stories and good characters. And as Aaron said, my number 1 pick, very obvious, Gato Move / Choco Pro. I've sort of already been over it, but I just think a strong year. They took the only promotion that sort of took advantage of the shutdown, COVID stuff to present a more effective product. Had great stories and many great matches. So to me, they were the runaway promotion of the year.
I don't know, man. I hate this. As I said earlier, nothing has really blown my proverbial skirt up this year. I think you're right that it's hard to pick anything other than Choco Pro as the best promotion of the year because of the creativity and inventiveness that they showed, and were still able to not just do a wacky thing, but also do just straight up good wrestling matches as part of their wacky thing, and interesting stories as part of it, and kind of everything all together. Some other promotions that I will shout out, you mentioned Tokyo Joshi, but a promotion that is genuinely growing, not necessarily just forcing growth. I'm not talking about any other promotions in particular when I say that at all. But yeah, Tokyo Joshi Pro. And they had this very, not only was the Wrestle Princess show really good, but it ends in a main event that had a compelling story that they built up over a very long period of time, and a story that paid off pretty well, right? By the end of that match, it's oh yeah, this is a nice way to end this all up. I've already given Diana some plaudits on the show, but I think they've had a good year. And then I think it would be insane not to mention Stardom. Obviously, we've talked about our problems with their booking on this show, but there's no doubt that even though I think it's forced rather than organic, there's no doubt that they've started running bigger buildings and are trying to grow the promotion, but just a terrifically unfulfilling year for me for Stardom. But yeah, so I'd probably go Choco Pro, Tokyo Joshi, Diana as my favorite promotions. I'm the only one probably including Diana in their top 3.
It's a bit weird because before this year they never made tape. So in a way they were, obviously they were a wrestling promotion, but for Western fans like us, they might as well not have existed. And of course, then you talk about Sareee, was sort of the big, the big well-known wrestler from obviously Jaguar is well known, but I'm talking about, sort of current younger wrestler. She was the big well-known wrestler from that company. And then it was announced that she was leaving. And so then it really felt like, okay, this promotion that no one sees, and now their big attraction is leaving. And I agree with you that they started the shows, Sareee wasn't there. It was sort of like, oh, this is a fun thing that we finally get to see this promotion. Sareee coming back, Haruka Umasaki has gotten really good. They had Asuka in for a while. So I think it's a very solid pick in terms of a company that is showing growth. It's easy to grow sort of from we don't present any shows, but I think at the beginning of the year, if you say Saree's leaving this promotion, you would have said, okay, we'll never hear from this promotion again. They just lost their biggest star. And yet they've reached the end of the year with probably the most hype that they've ever had in the history of the promotion. I mean, they just presented the Starlight Kid Haruka Umasaki match yesterday, or I believe it might have been today. So definitely a company on the upswing. So I think it's a great pick, Aaron.
Wow. I love this podcast. I'm having such a good time. Tag team of the year. This was tough for me. Not many stood out to me personally.
Yeah, it was tough for me as well. And one of my picks, I'm not even sure if it would be really counted as a Joshi tag team because it's a mixed team. Best Bros in Chaco Pro, which is Mei Suruga and Balyanaki. I thought they were great. Does it count as a Joshi tag team? Maybe not. But I thought they had such a great year. They were such a fun team that I couldn't see leaving them off. And I also picked Luminous. I thought Luminous had that great title win in Diana. They also wrestled had some matches in Actress Girls. So I think a fun team, two really great wrestlers who are on the upswing and are doing good work. So that was my two, because like you, Aaron, I also struggled a bit to think of strong tag teams.
And I also included Luminous, but I wanted to make sure that we talked about Miyuki Takase, who I think had an excellent year, but I'll talk about her a little more later. And then I included the Utami Hayashishita Saya Kamitani team. I thought they've had a pretty strong run as tag champs. And also, they did have that match. I hope to see them lose, but they didn't lose. But I think they both really work well together. I hated seeing the Utami Momo team break up, but I kind of enjoyed this iteration better, where it's Utami and Saya and Momo and Azumi. I kind of like the way they work together. So, that was a team that also stood out to me somewhat from the year. Okay, now I'm thinking, should we do matches and then most outstanding? We really should have done a pre-pro on this probably, but we didn't. So let's just do most outstanding.
Great.
So we're going to do most outstanding, and I guess we're also going to do Flair Thez. So the difference here, if you don't understand, and I didn't for some time, most outstanding, literally just, bell to bell, best wrestlers. Flair Thez has more of a business aspect to it. So we'll do most outstanding first.
Yeah, so my three most outstanding, number 3, Mei Hoshizuki. I've talked about her a lot on this podcast. I think she's probably the top quote-unquote rookie in Marvelous, although at this point she's barely a rookie. I think she's had a number of great matches. She had 2 matches against Maria, one in Marvelous and one in Sendai Girls earlier on in the year that I thought were both great. Was part of the 6-person tag in Stardom, had some strong matches at the Assemble shows that she's been on. So I just think a great year for her. I'm hoping in 2021, it was a bit of a strange year for Marvelous. between COVID hitting and they weren't running shows, and then they were running shows, but the shows have been less easily accessible than they have in the past. So I'm hoping 2021, we talked about last time they started a Nico channel. I know that they're doing some streaming pay-per-views. So hopefully in 2021, it gets a bit easier to see Hoshizuki, because I think she's super talented. As we'll talk about in a little bit, she's appearing on that Stardom show, that big Stardom show coming up, which I think is really great. I think she's super talented. She's now in Sendai Girls, but just had a year of really very strong matches. My number 2 is Mei Suruga. I think Mei Suruga had a fantastic year, majority of which was great matches in Choco Pro, but also started appearing in Tokyo Joshi and appeared in All Japan at one point. I think that was this year, if my brain is not totally fooling me. So I just think the combination of the great matches, she had a big audience connection. A lot of people, I think, really connected with her. A lot of times I would show friends matches, or I'd say, oh, you should watch this match. And they really connected with Mei Suruga. And then my number 1, Yuna Mizumori, by really a long shot. To give a little bit of sort of behind the scenes here, I keep a spreadsheet of every match that I watch in a given year, with all their star ratings and things like that. For the first year this year, I ended up, to make this end of the year picks easier, 3 3/4 star matches and above gave the wrestlers sort of points. So you got 10 points for a 5-star match, 8 for 4 3/4, and so on down. And I will say that Mei Suruga finished the year with 51 points, which is very high. Yuna Mizumori finished with 72 points, which is the equivalent of, she didn't do this, but the equivalent of having over 7 5-star matches in one year. So clearly a lot of points. She was by and far, had a great arc in Choco Pro, and just put together seemingly almost every show she was on in the promotion. At the bare minimum, very, very good match.
This guy's got a spreadsheet coming up with points for the most exciting wrestler.
It's all about data. I'm all about the data of wrestling.
Wow, apparently the fucking Chris Samsa of Joshi over here. Taylor Mainborg. Okay, well, I don't have points. I just kind of try to think about who I thought was good. So for my number 3, I went with Mei Suruga. Mainly I did so because, let's see, I can't remember if I did it on the show or if I just did this in like a DM with you, but Mei Suruga in the past was a little hard for me to get into. And I thought this year, between what she's done in different places, but especially in Choco Pro, I just think she's a lot of people are going to say she was always excellent. I'm going to say maybe it opened my eyes. I'm not exactly sure whether I missed it before or I just think she's gotten better. But I think a lot about that match that she had in Choco Pro with the tag match where Riho was on the other side. And you could almost just kind of see it in her face of like, this is time for me to like show out and like prove what I can do. And she did, and she did it in a lot of other matches throughout the year. So I thought Mei Suruga deserved a shout out, even though you already shouted her out. I also included Miyuki Takase. I may be early on including Takase here. I think she's really good, but I think she's going to be like exceptionally good. In one of the questions in a little bit, I'm probably going to bring her up. I just think she was very good this year, but it's almost something I'm expecting out of her in the future pick. And for me, I thought Mayu Iwatani was the best wrestler of the year. She had that excellent match with Momo. She had the 2 big Iroha matches. And I know this maybe doesn't factor in as much, but she was doing it in the biggest Joshi promotion. So I think that accounts for something, or counts rather for something. So Mayu Iwatani is my number one. And then the final of these awards, the Flair Thez. So I guess it's mostly like, who do you think drove business the best? I just think I don't know that anybody drives business that much in Joshi. I think this is a pretty tough one.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. I sort of try to look at it drawing wise, but a little bit of it was it's a tricky category for Joshi, where obviously there aren't a lot of huge draws like there are in other places. So number 3, I went with Momo Watanabe. She wasn't at the top of the card, so it's a little bit tricky to, say, oh, she was a huge draw this year, but she's working for the biggest Joshi company around. And I think that she had even though she had less opportunities, as Aaron talked about, I think that she had a very solid year, all things considered, considering that she didn't really have the opportunities that she's had in years past. I thought she did very well. Takumi Iroha, I went with for number 2. Marvelous isn't drawing huge houses, but Iroha has clearly been positioned, or was positioned before her injury, as the top star of Marvelous. Came over and had 2 great matches with Mayu Iwatani. So I just thought a strong pick, clearly the leader, the head of Marvelous in terms of the sort of wrestlers, I should say. So she was my number 2 pick, and my number 1 pick was Mayu Iwatani. Had a great in-ring year anyway, but then, of course, is clearly the biggest draw in the biggest company in Joshi. So to me, Mayu was an easy pick because she really checks all the boxes. She really is the one person in this category that I think is the solid home run pick in terms of in-ring and draw.
Yeah, I'm just my list is 1 deep, and it's Mayu Iwatani, who I think absolutely, especially this year with Stardom having a dearth of star power, as we talked about. I think Mayu Iwatani's presence has allowed them to be able to continue drawing at the level, even at the level that they have. So I just don't see a lot of, especially this year, I didn't see a lot of people moving business in any real way. But I'll give a shout out to Mayu here.
Yeah, and it's sort of funny to me that I look back at my ratings and Mayu's matches, that she sometimes feels a bit, she is the big star of Stardom. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, but sometimes it does feel a bit like she's sort of under the radar in terms of, I think back to when Io Shirai was around or in Stardom, she was always in contention for big awards. She was making top wrestler of the year lists with, male wrestlers, New Japan wrestlers, or, WWE wrestlers or what have you. And I feel like Mayu has a similar volume and quality of output as Io has, but seemingly doesn't quite get that sort of level of recognition where it was like, oh yeah, Io we know is, she's incredible. I think Mayu is maybe not directly at that level, but very close, but just doesn't seem to get the outside of Joshi notice that Io does, which is sort of a bummer because looking back, I think that she had another really strong, great year.
Yes, I agree very much so. How do you want to do the matches? You just want to do all 10 of them, or do you want to go back and forth? Or...
I think we should go back and forth starting from number 10.
Okay. All right, well, get us started. What was your 10th favorite match of the year?
All right, so my number 10 match was Arisa Nakajima versus Yoshiko from Seedling on July 13th, 2020. This was the match in which Yoshiko won the Beyond the Sea title. Just thought it was a great match, exactly what these two would be expected to deliver. I actually, strangely enough, think putting this at 10. I've talked with a lot of people who have this as their joshi, their top joshi match of the year. Just thought it was really hard hitting. Obviously, a big story of Yoshiko, who's been the sort of focus of the company, even though she hadn't had the title. She hadn't had the Beyond the Sea title yet. And the story of her finally getting that title, beating Arisa. I thought it was a really great match that delivered what you expect. So many times you go in and you say, oh, this match, it has the potential to be really good, and it doesn't quite get there. But this match I thought was really, really excellent.
I want to be clear that my brain is very bad, and I honestly don't even remember some of these matches that made it on my list. But what I tried to do was I did the worst job I've ever done of tracking matches this year. I try to at least make a note if a match is 4 stars or better. So I tried to find the ones that I rated the highest. And then I also tried to account for promotion diversity. So, I wanted to throw in some to just for shout out purposes. But yeah, I guess I'll comment more on matches that I have a really strong memory of. But the first one is not one such match. My 10th match, Miyuki Takase versus Nagisa Nozaki from Actress Girls on March 15th. In my defense, that was a long ass time ago.
It was, and I'll say this. I won't give it away now, but I'll give you a little bit of help a little bit later on.
Okay.
So
good.
Maybe for the best that you don't go deep in depth.
Yes.
For that match.
All right. 9th.
So my number 9 is Asuka versus Ayako Sato from the Diana Korakuen show on October 11th. Just thought it was a great match. It features really, if you're someone who hasn't watched a lot of Asuka this year and you want to, you say, well, I want to see what all the hype is about for this wrestler. I think that's a really great encapsulation of what made her so good this year. So yes, a very strong match. We've already talked about Diana, on the rise. And I think that this was a great cap to a Korakuen show, which for a promotion like Diana is a big deal, and thought it was a great headliner. So that is my number 9 match.
I also have a Diana match, number 9. It's the aforementioned Kaoru Ito and Tomoko Watanabe versus the Luminous team of Haruka Umasaki and Miyuki Takase. So Miyuki Takase appears in both my first 2 matches. This one I do remember pretty well. It's just, Ito and Watanabe just kind of can't move that much. And they did one of the best examples I've ever seen of having this other team just work around that and bump for them. And it just made it into like a very compelling match. There's a lot laid into, work rate and what that might mean. But, this proves, not that it needed to be proved, but that you can have a great match, including 2 people that really can't do anything athletically of any note. So I just think a lot of the context of the match makes it even better, but also on its own terms. It was just a great match. Number 8.
Number 8.
So now you're going to explain to me what happened in that match I talked about earlier.
Is Miyuki Takase versus Nagisa Nozaki from Actress Girls on March 15th. That was a long time ago. And it's funny because they did 2 matches. They had a match in Actress Girls for the Actress Girls title. And then I think a couple weeks or maybe a month later, they had a match in Wave for the Regina de Wave. I struggle to sort of in my mind separate them. So I just went with the first one because I think the first one is the one I liked slightly better. I gave them both the same exact star rating, which made it a little bit more difficult. But I think it was just a great, it's what I like in a match. It was very hard hitting. As Aaron said, I don't remember, I said, oh, Aaron, I'll help you out. I don't remember too much about it because it was back in March, which feels like so long ago, but just hard hitting. I thought sort of in putting this match on, I'm sort of putting both of them together because I thought it was a great, they delivered one match and then they came back out and had to deliver again, which is often very hard to do. You often see people who the first match, they'll sort of hold back. They'll say, okay, we have all these ideas, but we're wrestling in 3 weeks, so we can't do everything. And I thought they left it all out there twice in a row, hard hitting, lots of near falls. So to me, a great match. But you could have picked either the Actress Girls or the Wave match to put on the list.
All right. Next up on my list was the Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestle Princess main event of Yuki Sakazaki versus Mizuki match. I mean, we talked about this pretty recently on the show, so no real reason for me to dive back into it. But the moment of Mizuki hitting the what's that move called? The
new one?
Yeah.
Oh, what is it called? I'm terrible, as we've talked about on the show.
Yeah. But everybody knows what I mean. She kind of like climbs up on their shoulder and then does the spin in midair. It's just like, as bad as my memory is, that is just indelibly branded into my mind. So, we talked about it before the show of whether it was time for Mizuki to get the big win, but it kind of, in the end, made sense for Yuka to win, and it was a match that I really enjoyed. So it's on my list at number, 8?
8. My number 7 match is Emi Sakura and Riho against Yuna Mizumori and Mei Suruga. So a lot of people we talked about on our best of lists from this match was Choco Pro 50 from September 27th of this year. It's funny because I looked at my list after I had put everything together, and Riho ended the year very high, considering that for many months she didn't wrestle, and a lot of her matches were in Stardom where she was essentially given not much, if, nothing to do. But I think every time she came to Choco Pro, it felt very special. You could tell that, as Aaron mentioned, that people were very excited to have her and wanted to sort of put the best, their best foot forward. I think Riho came back and had a lot of fun, which really helped. So I really enjoyed this match. I thought it was the 4 sort of best people in Choco Pro, with Yuna and Mei on one side, and obviously Emi and Riho on the other. Thought it was, lots of near falls, fun. It's always fun in that, Ichigawa Chocolate Square, to see the way that the wrestlers utilize that space, especially in these sort of matches that are sort of more hyped or bigger deals. But I thought it was a lot of fun and an excellent match.
Okay, so moving on to number 7. This is my Choco Pro representative on the list. I went with Mei Suruga versus Mitsuru Kono from July 19th. I think this was Choco Pro 33. This has the big slap spot in it, right? Isn't that this match?
I believe it is. I believe it is that match. Yeah,
I think so. And this was one where, I'm like, okay, this, maybe I'm wrong about Mei Suruga, but also just a pretty good example of how good Kono is, who I thought is maybe slightly underrated as far as Choco Pro goes. But yeah, just like a very physical, hard-hitting match, in the waiting room of a dentist's office, like just everything you want.
My number 6 match is Miyako Matsumoto versus Cypress Ueno from Gaka no Fuchi, the Nobody show on June 5th. This is, I think, we talked about how Choco Pro really utilized the break or the lockdown to their advantage. I think this was really the other. It was only one match, but it really utilized sort of the restrictions to benefit them. If you haven't seen it, it is a match with no one in the ring, no one at ringside and no announcers in the building, but you hear the match going on, and there is a cameraman who is quote unquote following the action of what is, going on in the ring, and you can hear the match happening. But there is no one there. I just thought it was super unique. Matsumoto had a super interesting year. I also considered her January 4th match against Chris Brooks. That was one where I thought, well, is this a Joshi match because it has Chris Brooks in it? I don't know. So I went with this other match because I just think it was so unique. Totally, outside the box, outside of really everything. You will not see another match like this year or probably any other year in wrestling. So that I had to put it on my list. I actually didn't give it, it's a match that's very hard to rate and say, oh, this match is a, 4.5 star match. But I knew I had to get it on this list because I think it was so fun and so unique.
I had to include my next match, not just because I loved it, but because it drives people crazy that I love this match, apparently. Giulia versus Konami from Stardom's November 15th show. We talked about this at length on a previous show, so I will not go back through all that. But with a slightly different finish, this would have been much higher on my list. I thought it was one of the best obviously one of the best matches of the year. Certainly one of Stardom's best matches of the year. And I really highlighted how much Giulia has improved.
My number 5 match is Meiho Shizuki versus Maria from the Marvelous show on January 19th. I think this was the best representation of the style of the Marvelous rookies. Just 100% energy the entire time, working hard, hitting each other hard, going 100 miles an hour. You don't know who's going to win because they're, two sort of rookies on equal standing with each other. They had something to fight for, which is that the winner got to wrestle in the main event of the show. So I just thought this was the best distillation of what really has drawn me in with these Marvelous rookies in terms of them really never holding back in any of the matches they're in, but especially against a fellow rookie. Thought it was an excellent, excellent match.
All right. Stardom does appear on my list a few times. This one I haven't heard get a lot of love at year end, but I just adored this match. It was I forget where this took place. It was in a very small city. I'm trying to remember now. But it was Giulia, Syuri, Maika, and Himeka versus Momo Watanabe, Utami Hayashishita, Azumi, and Sayakami Tani from Stardom's July 24th show. 8-man tag that was just balls to the wall action from the time the bell rang until it was over, which is just what I like. Very fast-paced, hard-hitting matches. So it ticked all those boxes for me. The 8-man tag tradition continued here. That's a Gabe Sapolsky joke for everybody.
Very appropriate. I bet the listeners of this Joshi podcast really really loved it and also got it and appreciated it.
Right. That's why I didn't need to explain it for sure.
Yeah. So my number 4 match, this sort of starts in a way that I think that the matches that always resonate with me, regardless of year, are ones that combine obviously great in-ring work, but with some sort of storyline that you can invest in. So this one is the first example of that, which is Mayumi Ozaki versus Saori Anou from the Oz Academy Yokohama Buntai show on August 28th. Obviously, you had the story of Saori, sort of feuding with Sekigun. So that was the story of it. Saori coming out at the beginning of the match in all white, as opposed to Mayumi in, black. I thought it was super they were really going at each other. Syuri's bleeding all over the place. She's wearing white. So I just thought it was an excellent match. But I think the thing that really puts it over the top for me is that, storyline, something to invest in. So that is my number 4 match of the year.
Number 4 for me, I talked about this earlier, the Tsukasa Fujimoto Suzu Suzuki match from Ice Ribbon on March 15th. And that makes me realize that 2 of my top 10 matches happened on March 15th.
Well, that was a good day for you.
It was a great day. But yeah, that's my number 4 match. As I mentioned about the first March 15th match, I don't remember a lot about it, but I do remember that it was excellent.
My number 3 match is Kagetsu and Mayu Iwatani versus the reformed JK Green, Jungle Kyona, and Momo Watanabe from the Stardom 9th anniversary show in Osaka on January 26th. This really, to me, in many ways, felt like a throwback style match to when I started in Stardom, when there was, it was a lot of Io, Shirai, and Kairi Hojo teaming up. It was just very, quick pace, near falls, hard hitting. I mean, really 4 of the best wrestlers in the company in one match. At that point, Kagetsu was getting close to retiring, so really leaving it all out. Really enjoyed the one night reform of JK Green with Jungle Kyona and Momo Watanabe. So just thought it was an excellent match. Really the one match in my top 4 that didn't have that, didn't have an overt previous story. Obviously things like JK Green reforming, Kagetsu retiring, and things like that. But just thought it was a great match. Really felt like sort of a throwback to a few years ago in Stardom.
My number 3 is my final Stardom match on my list. I guess I kind of bunched them all up here. Mayu Iwatani versus Momo Watanabe from January 19th. This was just kind of like a classic Momo main event style match. She was excellent. It also had the really gripping post-match where, Momo is basically talking about how she's just going to keep fighting to try to get to Mayu's level. And at the time, I think I talked about this on this show. I don't know. When did we start doing this show? Right around COVID. But anyway, where it's like, oh, is the story going to be that like Momo has to now work her way back up over several years from the bottom to like finally getting to that match where she eventually beats Mayu Iwatani. And that's kind of what this left me with. I think this was also when B. Priestley turned on her after this match. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but anyway, it was a great match.
My number 2 match it was on Aaron's list as well. Yuka Sakazaki versus Mizuki from Tokyo Joshi Wrestle Princess on November 7th. We covered it on the show, all the things I enjoyed about it. Aaron also mentioned it before. Just a great match. And as I mentioned, a combination of great, really strong in-ring work with obviously a very compelling story to go along with it.
My number 2, bizarrely, we both listed an Arisa Nakajima versus Yoshiko match from Seedling, but different ones. And I have the January 24th match as my preferred of the 2. And in fact, one of my favorite matches of the year.
And my number 1 match of the year was Emi Sakura versus Yuna Mizumori from Choco Pro 28 on June 30th. I think, I've talked already a lot about Choco Pro. I don't know. You could probably make a couple arguments, but I think that this really was the peak of the promotion in terms of an incredible in-ring match married to a really great story, the story of Yuna Mizumori trying to prove herself, to sort of prove herself to Emi, but also to herself in a way. And this was the culmination of that. There were a couple other matches I could probably consider as the, as hitting that peak as well. But I think that this was sort of the first one that happened. So in that way, it sort of had the advantage of being it had the newness to it where really watching it, I was like, wow, I can't believe how well they've really created this compelling storyline along with just having an incredible match that would be incredible anywhere. You have it in this very small space, but they could have had it in a ring. It would have been equally as good. Really throwing everything at each other, giving 100%. So that, to me, the clear match of the year for me.
I've got a weird one as my match of the year. Honestly, it wasn't my most highly rated match of the year, but when I went back to think about these matches, this was the one that I've probably thought about the most throughout the year and that I think upon the most fondly. So I went with number one. It didn't even happen in a joshi promotion. This was Mayumi Ozaki and Saori Ano versus Aja Kong and Hiroyo Matsumoto in 0-1. This was the plasma super, what's it called?
Plasma Blast. I don't remember what this specific one was called, but I think Plasma Blast Deathmatch, yeah. I think.
Yeah, the plasma deathmatch idea with, the explosions, which we all love explosions, don't we, folks? So it made me, I'm trying to glamp while I pull up what it was called. The Blast Queen title Super Plasma Blast Deathmatch. So anyway, there were explosions. You got to do the gimmick where you try to turn on the electricity to the thing, but then you got to get turned off, whatever. I don't know. It was fun. It's just like, as I've gone through life watching way too much wrestling, it's just gotten to the point where I really need something vaguely dumb to really enjoy it. And this hit that sweet spot of having this kind of goofy setup, but with also being very compelling and, getting me on the edge of my seat watching it. So I love this match. Go watch it, but watch the one where the finish does not happen in a little small square like Taylor watched it.
Yeah. I liked that you liked the match so much that briefly you turned into a comedian doing crowd work. We like explosions, don't we, folks? You, sir, where are you from? Do you like explosions?
Yeah. There you go. And it happened at Colts Kawasaki, one of my favorite named arenas. So,
well, that is that's all of it. That's all the awards.
Yeah, that took longer than I thought it was going to.
Well, we had a lot to say, as always.
We did, but we have a lot of questions too to get to. All right, let's get them started. My good friend Tharos asks on Twitter, who would be a good / plausible next Beyond the Sea champ besides just going back to Arisa?
This is an interesting one because I don't know, only because I feel like Yoshiko might hold the title for a long time, so it might be that next person might not. It might not be obvious yet because they have some time. I was trying to think of people. Obviously, I don't know that there's anyone. Obviously, it's probably not going to be Hinori Hana, next month beating Yoshiko for the title. I thought an interesting one might be, Maya Yukihei is obviously not the Ice Ribbon champion anymore now that she was defeated by Suzu Suzuki. I think her coming in and holding the title for a bit, they are working, Seedling is working with Ice Ribbon. I think that, might be fun. I don't know how plausible it is. But I think currently in the company, it's only 6 people. So I think Yoshiko's going to hold it for a while. So I don't know that there really is that next person quite yet.
All right. Gerard DeTrolio in the VOW Discord asks, where do you see Sendai Girls a year from now if Satomura remains in NXT UK for all that time? To me, I think this is tough to sort because I don't really know who's in power at this point. I don't know what Mako's involvement is at this point, but it's would it be that surprising to you if Sendai Girls cease to exist at some point?
I would be a little bit surprised in that it feels Sendai Girls is it's sort of in a bucket with it's that and it's sort of Oz is in the same bucket where it feels like the ship has been pointed in a direction and they're just sort of going. It's just like, okay, we're going to run these shows. They're going to draw, 100 people or 200 people or however many it is. Then maybe once a year we have a big show. It draws, a bunch of people, and that's what we do. I don't know that they're trying to do anything that would sink them. I don't know if maybe people say, well, we're going to stop going if Mako's not wrestling, but she wasn't the focus of, she wasn't in title matches. She wasn't holding titles really. But it is tricky because, if someone comes in, or if Mako was booking and now Mako's not booking, we don't know if that's the case. And someone comes in who ends up being a great booker, they could maybe do better. But I just think they're a company now that is sort of, they are where they are. They're not trying to, become the top company. And they don't seem to me, I don't know their finances, they don't seem to me like they're going to close. So the boring answer to this is they might be in the same position they are now, just they don't have Mako on a lot of these shows.
All right, Ed Carden in the VOW Discord had a couple of questions. First, if Stardom is the top Joshi promotion right now, who is number 2? I just want to be clear that Stardom is unquestionably the top Joshi promotion.
Yes, I
find
think
this discussion very strange. Not the who's number 2, but who's number 1. I find a very strange discussion.
Yes, it is Stardom. I think number 2 is either Tokyo Joshi or Ice Ribbon.
Yeah, it depends how you define it, right? And I also think it's hard for us because it's hard to separate who's the biggest as a Western fan versus which is the biggest promotion in Japan.
I mean, I would probably go with Ice Ribbon just because they run so many shows. And just the number of shows, and then they're able to run Korakuen with some degree of regularity. As we'll talk about in a bit, they seem to be getting in some alliance with All Japan, which might help them grow the company a little. I think you could probably make an argument for either, but I would go with Ice Ribbon just because of their schedule seems to be the schedule of a company that's a bit bigger than Tokyo Joshi, which runs, Korakuen 4 times a year and, hasn't had a lot of huge shows.
I would agree with you on that. Next, once travel restrictions lift, who are some American/Western talents you think would both benefit from and be a good fit to tour with Joshi promotions?
Well, I'll say this, the first thing that comes to mind, maybe because I watched a match with her this week that was very good. Priscilla Kelly had a great match with Thunder Rosa on the most recent NWA Shockwave.
I got to watch that. I haven't seen it yet.
It's excellent. It was, this is meant as a compliment. It was very surprising. Priscilla Kelly looked excellent, very good, great strikes, really had it all. She has appeared in Tokyo Joshi, but it was sort of as a more, it had a comedy bent to her matches a lot of the times. So I would love to see her come back and do something, not that this would happen, but do something with a seedling, for example, that would fit her more, hard hitting persona that she seems to have adopted. And, the other option is, this is sort of, beating a dead horse a little bit, but, the people in AEW, there's a whole list of them. I think Penelope Ford is one who could really benefit from coming over to a place like Marvelous, where she would be able to train with Chigusa, who's a great trainer, and really get that little boost, because I think Penelope Ford is very good, but is, sort of missing that next level. And I think a lot of that next level might come from, a different perspective and also a good trainer. So those would be my 2 picks.
Yeah, there's a lot of people from AEW, especially, that I see on Dark, that I would love to see get a Japanese tour. Tai Conti is one who I think could really benefit from something like that, even though I think she's already quite good. I mean, Penelope was the one I would have also mentioned, and you nailed that. But and while we're talking about Tai Conti, why not Anna Jay? Get her some reps. I think those people are probably going to be more featured, and so not get a chance to go do something like that. But there's certainly people who I think would work, and then some people who have gotten tours before. Let's fight about it right here. Layla Hirsch, who I really like, and Taylor thinks is the shits.
Excuse me, I do not think that.
That was a joke.
That is categorically false.
I was kidding. Anyway, she's gotten a Japanese tour before, but it would be good. And frankly, I'd just love to see Jamie Hayter back in Japan.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, hopefully a lot of the people who were there, a lot of people who were there regularly will come back. I'm hoping.
Yeah, here's hoping. Okay. Rika Tatsumi slipping into the VOW Discord. Very nice. To ask a couple questions. One, why has Mika Iwata already eaten a pin? And if I knew that, Rika.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because she was out, with the injury. So I think in a way that her coming back is sort of a restart. I know there's frustration that she, has not been at the top of the company when she should be. I'm not too worried yet. Sendai Girls, as we just mentioned, it's sort of in wait and see mode. See what happens. Is someone new booking it? If in 6 months she's sitting in the quote unquote mid card as she's always been, then we can sort of talk about it. For now, I'm taking a sort of long view, wait and see approach with that.
And then, of course, Rika's other question: is Rika Tatsumi winning all the awards and belts in 2021?
I'm going to say no, because she probably wouldn't win all the awards. For example, Rika Tatsumi probably by herself could not win Best Tag Team of the year.
She also can't win most overrated and most underrated.
Correct. That is correct. And she's already very good, so the chance of her winning most improved probably is tough unless I guess she could improve and become incredible. I guess that is possible. I mean, I think that she's clearly near the top of Tokyo Joshi, so the chance of her holding a belt, it may not be the top title in Tokyo Joshi, but she could win the tag titles again. So it certainly could happen because I think she is one of the better in-ring workers in Tokyo Joshi. So she'll always sort of be in the conversation.
All right, a few questions from our friend Tim Dog, who asks, first, which match do you think will end highest on the VOW Match of the Year list? And secondary to that, will the two Iroha Iwatani matches cannibalize each other?
So I think that there's a couple things that have to happen in order for a Joshi match to finish high on the Voices of Wrestling Match of the Year list. They are that the match has to have happened in August or later. It's usually on a big show, and it's something that at the time it has to have some sort of feeling that it gets past the Joshi bubble. Just because I think it is very hard, because a lot of people who vote in that for that list, most of them probably have seen less than 5 women's matches, Joshi matches in the year. So you really have to have something that the Joshi community can rally around. I mean, the recency is a thing that I think that's just a fact, because you look back at the matches that have finished highly. And I think the earliest one was the Hikaru Shida Aja Kong match a few years back, which I think happened in August. So my pick would be the Yuka Sakazaki Mizuki match from Tokyo Joshi. It's easily accessible because it's on Wrestle Universe. It happened in November, so it's still fairly recent. It got good reviews, and people sort of outside the bubble of Joshi watched it. They reviewed it on the Voices of Wrestling flagship, which almost never happens. So that would be my point that would be my choice. I think Stardom is always difficult because I think they have the drawback of they run so many matches and they have so many contenders, even outside of the 2 Aroha Iwatani matches. I think there's so many options in Stardom. I mean, you heard Aaron and I's match of the year lists, and we had different Stardom matches on the list, even just the 2 of us. So I think that is the thing that does cannibalizing for Stardom more than, just the 2 Aroha Iwatani matches.
Yeah, I mean, as it comes to those, I mean, I don't know, maybe this isn't a widely shared belief, but I just think the first one was so much superior to the second one that I don't think that'll happen, but could be wrong.
Aaron, I think you'll be surprised to find that is not the popular. That is
really
not the popular opinion. No, I believe the popular opinion is that the second one is better.
Wow. I don't think it's particularly close, but that's interesting. Okay. Tim also asks, do you think Saya Ida is a fan of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla? We get it, Tim. I got the joke.
Do you think they get the DVDs over there? Are the DVDs at like Todokan?
I don't remember.
Have I ever seen them there? I bet they probably are there, frankly.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, I didn't look for them, certainly.
But that's an expensive, a DVD based, viewing model would probably be expensive in Japan, getting the DVDs from America. So I'm going to say no.
Okay. Do you think we'll see any of Utami's siblings become wrestlers? To me, there's so many of them that chances are high. Got to be one of them.
Chances are high, and especially if Utami, does become more successful, I think that would be probably more of a draw for siblings to say, wow, look at this. She's at the top of the company. She has all these fans. So, sure.
And I will say this bleeds into the next question, but my Japanese teacher, after Utami won, what did she win? The 5-star? My Japanese teacher mentioned it to me the next time we had a lesson. Like she saw it on some news site. So I think, that could probably help if it's getting like relatively mainstream news coverage because of who she is. So anyway, Tim Dog also asked for me, how is the Japanese going? And do I have any tips for staying motivated? The Japanese is going pretty well. I will say this, it's a very difficult language to learn. So, I certainly have my struggles, and there's some things that I repeatedly get wrong, and my teacher has to help me with. My tips for staying motivated are hire a private teacher, because she gives me homework or whatever for each week, and it's like, then I feel like I really have to do it, or I'm gonna. It's funny because obviously I pay her, and so I guess I could just not do it, and then I would be the one losing. What does she care if I don't do it? But it makes me think like, oh, I really have to do this. So if your brain works that way, my tip would be, hire someone to keep you motivated in that way. Also, if you're planning, and I know it's hard to plan trips right now because of everything, but if you're planning to go to Japan, I think it's good to, that can help you stay motivated. Not that you really you don't need to speak Japanese. I didn't speak but like 5 phrases when we went. But I do think it would be helpful and perhaps more fun if you understood the language while you were there. So those are my tips. Next up, is it possible that an under the radar joshi company steps up in the next year as a major or at least bigger force in the scene? This question is from Ricardo on Twitter.
My pick would be, I think Actress Girls is an interesting company to keep an eye on. They clearly have, they started a streaming service this year. There's been some movement, people going out of the company. I just think they're interesting because I think that they are a company that has aspirations to get bigger. As I talked about, Oz Academy, I don't think is ever going to, say, oh, we've got to become a huge, big company and draw tons of people every time. But I think Actress Girls has that sort of motivation. They have a great roster. They have sort of the draw of this, performance, the wrestling, but also the performance base, which is unique. Tokyo Joshi has a little bit of it. But Tokyo Joshi is sort of more larger than life characters, where Actress Girls is a little bit more serious than that. So I think Actress Girls would probably be, for me, the company to keep your eye on to see what they do in 2021.
What are some young wrestlers we should keep our eyes on in 2021?
Well, I think we've sort of mentioned them all in our awards. I mean, Haruka Umasaki with Diana getting, a bigger presence is someone to keep your eye on. The rookies from Seedling, Honori Hana and Riko Kaiju, just because it's interesting to see what happens with them. We don't know what their path forward is in terms of sort of what kind of push they're going to get, what their experience will be. And of course, young wrestlers, we're getting to the point where I believe all of the quote unquote marvelous rookies, Maria, Meiho Shizuki, it's already happened with Makoto Shindo, are going to sort of quote unquote graduate into being wrestlers. I believe they'll get new gear like Makoto Shindo got. So I think that will be interesting once they're full-fledged, no longer rookies. It will be interesting to see what happens with them.
Yes, I think you covered most of the major young wrestlers. Any thoughts on the weird OSU card? That's the OSU card, Ricardo. And all the returns. Here's the card. Megumi Kudo versus Shark Tsuchiya. Cutie Suzuki versus Rumi Kazuma. Dump Matsumoto and Bull Nakano versus Jumbo Ori and Yukari Omori. Aja Kong, Tsukasa Fujimoto, and X versus Yumiko Hota, Michiko Omukai, and Sareee.
Yeah, really very interesting. The show's happening on the December 26th. It's supposedly, I believe, backed by people who back 0-1 or something like that. My thoughts is, as you said in the question, very strange. Outside of that top match that has Aja Kong and Fujimoto and Sareee in it, I believe underneath, all the wrestlers combined underneath have wrestled maybe 15 minutes in the last 5 years. Dump Matsumoto was on the second Assemble card, which makes her, I think, almost by default, the most experienced wrestler in the last 5 years out of all of these people. Bull Nakano has wrestled 33 seconds in the last 5 years. So I don't know how this is going to happen. I could equally see they come to the date of the show and there's some sort of switch, sort of bait and switch where they're like, oh, the thing that's going to happen actually is they're going to do a debate or something. But I don't really know because we haven't seen these people. Are they going to be still able to go in the ring? I have no idea. I hope it makes tape because I'm fascinated to see either way what happens. And I would love to see, Bull Nakano, who I really love and obviously haven't seen wrestled very much in the past, even in the past decade, haven't seen very much. So I will be keeping my eye on this to see exactly what happens. It's a bit of a bizarre occurrence.
JBish137 on Twitter asks, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, your thoughts on the All Japan and Ice Ribbon thing that appears to be happening.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I think we've seen, we saw Stardom. How did they get bigger? They got bought by they got taken over by Bushi Road. But obviously that's not going to happen with every company. And Ice Ribbon is at the top. But I think at a point now where they have to sort of try some things to get more eyes on the promotion. And I think that some sort of Ice Ribbon, working relationship with All Japan. All Japan is a sort of not at the top. It's well regarded. It has some good wrestlers. It's not perfect. There's been some criticisms with the booking. this year. But I think it would be interesting, and I think it would be beneficial for Ice Ribbon to get more eyes on the promotion, which is never a bad thing, especially with Ice Ribbon that, as I mentioned, can deliver in ring. And I don't think if they were put on an All Japan show that people are going to sit there and go, oh, this is terrible, oh, this is horrible. I think it's only going to benefit and get more eyes on the promotion.
It also goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the number 2 promotion or whatever is, like you said, we can argue about Ice Ribbon versus Tokyo Joshi, but Tokyo Joshi is part of Cyber Agent, even though I don't know that they put a ton of resources into Tokyo Joshi Pro, considering the people who, I don't know, either had to be cut by Tokyo Joshi for budget reasons or Stardom outbid them for. I don't know what the story is on that really. But anyway, it makes sense for Ice Ribbon to team up with someone so that they can try to jump to that next level. So I don't know if it's going to help them grow, then I'm for it, basically, is my thought. And then Velkej Brasha, and I apologize, Velkej, if you want to help me better pronounce your name, please slide into my DMs or at me and tell me the right way to pronounce your name so I don't screw it up. Which up girl will get a title reign first, and which belt? Well, there's 3 Tokyo Joshi Pro questions, so let's group those. Which up girl will get a title reign first, and which belt? Is Yuka Sakazaki the ace of Tokyo Joshi Pro? And who should win the next Princess Cup? Answer those in your own way, Taylor.
Well, I'll rank the up girls. I think it would be number 1 would be Miyu, number 2 would be Hikari, and number 3 would be Raku. I'm not sure that would be controversial. And I think that the International Princess title is very interesting now because now, at least for the time being, there aren't any, foreign wrestlers, Western wrestlers coming over. So it's going to be a Japan-focused belt. And I think that, that seems to me, I don't think any of these people are going to be boosted right into the top title scene, especially when you already have a grouping of wrestlers who are at that level and can sort of mix and match there. Yuka, Mizuki, Rika Tatsumi, Miyu, and things like that. So that would be my choice there. I think Yuka is the ace of Tokyo Joshi. I mean, she has the title. She has represented the company in AEW, which seems to me like, I don't know how that decision was made, but I would imagine the company had some say in that and probably would have said, this is the person we want representing us. So I would say yes. Who should win the next Princess Cup? I mean, it could be someone like, Hikari Noah had a good showing in that international tournament. She got pretty far. So I think if you're looking to move someone up, she could be a solid candidate.
I like that idea. That makes sense. We still have, I'm trying to think of who all was in the semifinals this year, but Maki Ito is still someone who certainly it would make sense for her to be in that group. She would make sense as someone to win and go on for a title shot. So that's the other person I would put up besides somebody like Hikari Noah. Next question. Did you feel that Mayu would never be on top after Momo beat her in 2018 when she challenged for the white belt?
So I'll just sort of tackle this more generally in that there is, because, we do these shows and in the Voices of Wrestling Discord, we do have conversations about things that come up or things that, I say and people agree or disagree. And I think there is a weird thought that Mayu sort of was, until maybe this year or the year before, was sort of a mid-card, not nobody, but sort of a mid-card wrestler who was just sort of there. But in my memory, I started watching in 2014. And to me, obviously she was in this grouping with Io and Kairi, who Io was the biggest star in Joshi and probably the biggest star in Joshi in the last 10 years. Kairi obviously had the huge fan connection. She was very talented in the ring. But I feel like sometimes people say, well, she was number 3 in the group, as if she was just some sort of they couldn't figure out who else to put with them. So they were like, oh, we'll just put this random. I mean, to me, Mayu has been, even if she's not at the top directly, she's not holding a belt. I mean, she has been the top star in this company for at least the last 3 years, I would think. Back to 2017, she held the title, for a while. Then she got injured, unfortunately, which was out of anyone's control. But to me, Aaron, I don't know if you disagree with this, but I feel like she has always been the top star in this company for the last 3 years. Certainly since Io and Kairi left, it has been her, and then they elevated Momo. But to me, Mayu is sort of the legacy, the legacy star that, she was a star. And even if they elevate more people and they get more stars, she will remain a star, also because she can produce so consistently in the ring. But I think that she has that, she was one of the first people in the company. She has the sort of clout, having been around, she has the fan connection. So to me, she's been a star. So the question of she would not be on top, she's been on top. And I think even when she's not holding a title, she's either the top or one of the top stars in the promotion.
She is currently the top star. I don't think it's questionable, really. And I agree with you that she's been the top star at least since Io and Kairi left. She's the icon of Stardom for a reason, right? That's what they call her. Anyway. And then some Sareee questions to close us out. Was there a Sareee 2019 in 2020? Meaning did somebody have the kind of year she had in 2019? And who can have a Sareee 2019 if allowed by COVID in 2021?
It's funny because so much of what sort of defined Saree's 2019 for me was that you didn't see her all that often. It wasn't like she was wrestling every week or you were seeing, 10 matches a month from her. It was like she would have a match and it would be amazing. And you'd be like, this is a great match. And then a month later, she would have another match that was great. So it wasn't really a volume thing for Syuri. It was just that every time she appeared, she seemed to be having a quality match. So it makes it sort of hard to compare because like Utami Hayashishita had a great year, as I said. But she was having a match like every few days on Choco Pro, they do a show and she was having a match. So it's sort of hard to compare for me saying, okay, this person had, 10 matches that were all great. And this person had 50 matches that were all, most of which were very good. Who can have a Sareee 2019 if allowed by COVID in 2021? It's hard to say. I mean, someone like Arisa Nakajima is always, in that conversation as someone who doesn't wrestle all that often, but when given the opportunity can really pump out the sort of quality that Sareee produced. But a lot of times these things come out of, it's hard to predict because, the year before it had been Masaki Ohata, who had a great year. And then Sareee really came out of nowhere. She was someone who had been around for many years having good matches and then came out of nowhere. So sometimes these things are tricky to predict.
She'd been around for many years, he says, about a 22-year-old or whatever.
Well, she had been around for many years.
I know, but it's still funny. To me, it's like when you say Sareee 2019, it's like there was legitimate, maybe it was mostly joshi people, but there was legitimate talk about her being the best wrestler in the world of any wrestler. So I'm not sure that happened in 2020. 2021, I don't know if it's just that she reminds me of her in so many ways, but I think of a young wrestler who could just put it all together and have everybody talking about her all the time. And I'm going to shout her out one more time on the show, and that's Miyuki Takase. That's my choice.
Yeah, I also think there is the aspect of, I talked about Utami Hayashishita, but the tough thing with her is that a lot of times you say, hey, you should watch Choco Pro, and people turn it on and they go, whoa, what is this? This isn't a wrestling ring. I'm never going to watch this because it's not real wrestling. So I think Miyuki is a good choice because she is sort of a traditional, Sareee is very talented, but is a traditional wrestler. No, she's wrestling in a ring. She's wrestling for the big companies. So Miyuki is a good pick. It just, you never know. You don't know with what the booking's going to be for anyone. Sareee had the advantage of she sort of freelanced that year where she was appearing in Sendai Girls and she was appearing in Wave and things like that. So you really also need someone, and I think Miyuki could be that person who can appear in a bunch of different promotions if they're not getting consistent opportunities, which Miyuki might get being the champion in Actress Girls in their own promotion.
All right, let's close this show out rather by talking about Stardom a little bit. Some news on the Nippon Budokan show they're going to have. Yusuke Aikawa will make a one-night return to Stardom, according to them, for the All-Star Rumble, which, according to their English Twitter account, will feature, quote, Stardom OG wrestlers, joshi legends, and more will be in the Rumble. You won't know who comes through the curtain next.
Yeah, very exciting. I mean, you had to think there's been so much, videos and, on her Instagram of Yusuke training. She had a quote-unquote match with Yoshiko on the Seedling YouTube channel. So you had to think something was happening. You also have to think the fact that she's been spending so much time with Seedling, yet is doing this Stardom show. And she mentioned Yoshiko in an interview about her returning. So it seems likely in some effect that Yoshiko, maybe Nanae Takahashi will be making their return to Stardom. They would certainly fit Stardom OG wrestlers, and Takahashi might even, depending on your definition, might fit Joshi legends as well. So probably seeing that. I would imagine we'll probably see some Marvelous involvement. But it will be interesting to see in this build-up because they're going to probably have to have a number of these big announcements spread out over the next few months to get people into that venue.
Yes, but this is certainly one of the people we talked about that needed to be on this card to try to do a big number. So this makes sense and makes us look smart. So all things I like. All right, let's go down the card for the December 20th show. I'll start at the bottom. Future Stardom title, Maika Sayaida and Saya Kamitani in a three-way match. Interesting that they're kind of starting these bigger shows. They're using the Future Stardom match as like an opener for these shows, which I think is a good idea. I like it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. This seems like the three of them seem like the Future Stardom division. And with the announcement that the twins and Hanan are not with the company, at least for the time being, if not more, it's interesting to me what will happen with this title if it just becomes a handoff between these three wrestlers who are one of the, Ruaka sort of could, I guess, fit that mold. But there aren't that many contenders for this title. So interesting to see if this is a match we see a lot in the future going forward.
Then we have Riho and Ruaka versus Natsuko Tora and Konami. What is there to say? I mean, I had someone try to tell me the other day that Riho is pushed to the exact right amount at Stardom, that they don't really need another star. And what do you say to that? What do you say?
Well, I'll say I think this match is probably to get Oedo Tai a victory. I guess that's really the only...
the 13-year-old monster takes the pinfall.
I guess. Yeah, there's nothing really to say. I mean, Riho at this point just feels like, a body when they're like, oh, we need someone for a match. Oh, okay. It'll be Riho.
Yeah, it's insane.
She won't win, but she won't get pinned, so it's all,
right
out in the wash.
The Oedo Tai team of B. Priestley and Saki Kashima versus the Donna Del Mondo team of Himeka and Natsupoi.
Do you think that Donna Del Mondo has to win this match? Can Himeka lose? This is a big show. They've had a few shows, obviously, in the past few weeks. But I can't imagine on another big show put on pay-per-view that you could have Himeka lose again And
after like building her up for that title match, they've just beaten the absolute shit out of her. I mean, it's miserable to watch. So no, I mean, like Saki has to take the pinfall here, right?
yeah, I would think so.
As I was going back over my notes, I also remembered that Saki Kashima got the first pinfall on Giulia in Stardom.
That'll be in like 5 years if there's a like Stardom trivia. That'll be the hardest question to answer.
This is probably the match I'm most excited about for the show. Azumi versus Meiho Shizuki for the high-speed title.
Aaron, I'm going to say something very controversial that may upset you. I think that this is going to be the best match on the card.
I can't decide yet if that upsets me, but maybe. I'll think about whether it upsets me.
Oh, I thought it definitely would upset you. Yeah, I just think Azumi obviously very good, and as we talked about, Meiho Shizuki was at the top of near the top of my Wrestler of the Year list. And I think put in a big spot like this, obviously the biggest show that May has worked on, as it is now, or as it's listed on the website, this will be sort of the beginning of the sort of upturn of the card. So I would imagine they would hopefully be given a good amount of time, and I think that they will definitely deliver, and I am really, really looking forward to this match.
I agree. It should be very good. So we will see. Next up is a 6-woman tag match. Mayu Iwatani, Starlight Kid, Gokigen Death versus Tam Nakano, Mina Shirakawa, and Sayaka Unagi. You've noted here, is Stars breaking up?
Yes, the official name of the match on the Stardom website is Break of Stars?
Break of Stars, question mark?
Yeah, with the question mark included. So, Aaron, do you think that Stars are going to break up?
I just can't imagine what on earth would be the point of that. Like, why split these up?
It's interesting because there's
another unit.
There's some rumbling that that they will break up and Tom will start getting a push, but does she get a push leading this unit?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great. I think we talked about on the show that Tom deserves a push and like makes sense as someone to get pushed, so that'd be cool. But I don't know. I guess that's what I'm missing. If the idea is they're going to do it to give Tom a push and make her like a featured person, then it makes a lot of sense to me. But otherwise, I just don't understand creating a new unit that of which Tom is the leader. That seems weird.
Of which Tom is the leader, and there's really no, she would be 1A. Who is the 1B in that 3-person unit? I mean, they would have to get someone else, I would think.
Yeah, I would also think so, but I don't know. Or, I mean, there could be some mixing up coming soon. I don't know. Maybe that's the thing that'll happen. They can get somebody else from another unit. I mean,
Yeah, I just think I don't know. Do you think the fact that they're teasing it means they will break up or that they won't break up? Like they're teasing it to be like, here's why you should care about this match, and then they break up.
That's a possibility. That's all. That's the only reason that they're really doing it. So I don't know. Hard to say for me, really. Next up, there's only 2 matches left. The 2 big matches, Giulia versus Syuri for the Wonder of Stardom / SWA title. I just have a bad feeling this is going to a draw.
That's interesting. Now, I will say, to cover our bases, that I believe Giulia is half Italian.
She is. So she could hold both titles.
She could hold both titles. You correctly nailed the Syuri victory.
I'm so smart.
You're so smart, Aaron. So I think the likelihood of outcomes is draw, Giulia win, and then probably fairly far down Syuri winning. Does that? I mean, I don't see any world in which they have Syuri beat Giulia for the Wonder of Stardom title.
No, I don't, and I don't see the point of Giulia holding the SWA title. Especially when I think you're trying to help, kind of turn Syuri into, a 4th maybe level star in your company. And as you've noted, they have just fallen in love with doing draws. So I think a draw is coming here.
Yeah, they have fallen in love with draws, so I actually think draw is probably, and also, as you noted when you said, "Oh, there's only 2 matches left,"
it's a short card.
It's like there's a ton of matches on this card, so they may be building in 30 minutes for this match to go to a draw.
Yeah, and it's not your main event, so. And Giulia, I think unquestionably the bigger star than Utami, so that might tell us something. Utami versus Momo Watanabe for the World of Stardom title is the top match on the show. I guess the reason I don't really flinch at you saying Azumi and Meiho Suzuki is going to be better is these matches for me are really hurt by just knowing that Momo isn't going to win. Just there's no stakes. If that match in New York that we watched, I totally could have bought Utami beating Momo for the title there, and they did a great tease in the match of Utami winning. So apparently I can remember old matches, as I can remember that match pretty much spot for spot. But I don't know. Now, Momo had that great match with Mayu that I think the ending was pretty well understood what was going to happen. So they certainly could do a great match here. They've done great matches in the past, but they're going to have to work really hard to do something in here that makes me think that puts the ending in doubt.
Yeah, I don't think the ending. I think I wouldn't understand Momo winning unless they've, for some reason, already bailed on Utami as a top star. Which why would they? They have almost no. They've run a few little shows, but I would hope they're not basing their decisions based on 4 tiny, house shows after her title win. So I can't see a world in which Momo wins, even though I would like that because I like Momo and I think she's very talented. But, there's been a lot of talk that Momo is on her way up, but this is too fast. If this match was happening in 4 months, maybe I could see it, but not now.
Honestly, my take is if Momo is ever a champion again, it's going to be 2 years from now when she faces Mayu and finally beats her. I don't see anything coming any more quickly than that. Would love to be wrong. Just don't see it happening. And frankly, based on everything they've been doing, it makes sense. Utami should win this match. I would think it was dumb if Momo won this match based on what they've done leading up to it. So I'm not going to be upset if she loses. I think that would make sense. It's just it does hurt the quality of the match. And, we're not going to see it live, so I'll probably be spoiled for it anyway.
Yes, although I will say they did announce it is on pay-per-view in Japan, but they will be showing, I believe, the first match, the Future of Stardom match, if the card is in order, on YouTube for free.
Which, by the way,
yeah,
we talked, I can't remember if we talked about this on the show or if it was just on Twitter, but about why they don't stream their shows live, which Tokyo Joshi Pro has been pointing out recently that, if you want live streaming, you got to be a Wrestle Universe subscriber, which is true. But it kind of points to a couple of things. One is that they absolutely have the ability to stream these big shows live. They're going to stream the first match of this show live, so they can do it. The second thing is, and maybe this is true, somebody said maybe the website they use doesn't have the capability to do it. And maybe that's true, because otherwise, why not put this up on Stardom World and charge for it, for people to watch it live? So I think it leads me to believe that there's maybe a technological issue, which is inexcusable, embarrassing in 2020 if you can't figure out the technology to stream this live if you have the capability to do so.
Well, also, I think there is some argument that people do like the subtitled promos, which those subtitle promos are great, but I don't think it's a world in which we should have to say, well, you get one or the other. No. I think you could say, okay, we'll live stream the show just to let you know we're not going to have, it's not going to be subtitled. If you want subtitled, the show will go up as they always do, a few days later, or they'll go up a match at a time or whatever whatever it is, they will go up, but just later. So you can make the choice. If you want to watch it live, you can watch it live. If the promos are very important to you, then you can just continue as you are. It feels like
everybody forget that this is exactly what New Japan used to do. I mean, you used to have to go to their YouTube and watch the translated promos later. So what's the problem? Why can't we do that?
Yeah, I just, and I don't, yeah.
Or they could just hire someone like Hakusan who could put the translations on Twitter. I mean, that works really well for Tokyo Joshi Pro shows to me.
Well, and I'll say that in terms of, maybe they don't have the, technology, but for example, Zyko, which is where both Assemble shows have been, and there was the Sendai Korakuen was on that. It worked very well. It's easy to use. You just go, you can put in, I believe they take PayPal. You can put in your PayPal information, and the stream is it's high quality. It works very well. It's easy to use. Marvelous has been using the streaming service. So it isn't like there's no options where we have to put it on Stardom World website or else, they're doing this pay-per-view in Japan. So clearly they don't have too much of a problem with not having it directly on Stardom World, but it's just very weird. Or if you do a pay-per-view, put it on a system where everyone can see it and not just, okay, this is a pay-per-view only for Japanese fans. That seems to be cutting, especially when we hear all the time, oh, the big focus is Western fans on Stardom World. The big focus. And then they do these pay-per-views and they're like, sorry, Japan only.
Well, I guess we should have taken it seriously when they said after Bushiroad bought them that they were going to basically turn that around and focus more on their Western or on their Japanese audience. So, I mean, they got rid of their international store. They, stopped doing any sort of live streaming. And I guess really they just mostly focus on Japan, which is fine. I don't have any problem with that. But it's just frustrating as a Western fan. All right. Well, on that dour note, I think that's the show. Follow us on Twitter at JBombAudio. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor's at TayMainbow. Subscribe to the show, please. Give us a 5-star rating and a review on the Apple Podcast app. Tell a friend about the show. And if you would like to support the show, you can do so by going to redsircle.com/shows/jumping-bomb-audio and tossing us a donation. Anything else you want to add, Taylor?
I do have something else to add.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Something else to add. I just wanted to say this isn't our last show of the year. We'll have a show in 2 weeks. Right before the new year, but because it's the year in review and we're sort of wrapping up this year, I did want to thank everyone who has listened to the show. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. We've had a lot of great discussions with people on Twitter and in the Voices of Wrestling Discord. So if you've listened to the show, if you've enjoyed the show, if you've dropped us a note or anything like that, we're very appreciative. I think Aaron will agree that we sort of started this show just seeing what would happen. And then we were sort of thrown a curveball with all the COVID stuff. But I've had a great time and look forward to doing the show more in 2021.
Yes, I have to echo your thoughts. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, the thing that I enjoy the most is chatting with Taylor every 2 weeks. That's fun. The thing I enjoy the second most is hearing from people what they like or don't like, or just thoughts on the show. Like I really like that. I like interacting with people. So, please drop me a note at me. But only if you agree with me, not if you disagree with me, obviously. But we do have one more show. I think that will mainly be reviewing the 12/20 Stardom show, right? That's going to be the main thing.
Yeah, that will be the main thing. I don't think there's too much. There will be too much more to cover. I think that Tokyo Joshi has one more show or something like that, but there aren't that many other shows happening in the next 2 weeks. So that Stardom show will be the main focus of the next episode.
Yeah, so look out for that. It'll be on the same schedule that we're always on. So until then, that's the end of the show. Bye.
Bye-bye.